Welcome to Black Mental Health and Healing Justice 201. I want to take a few moments to let people get in the room. Generally, we start about 5 minutes after just to let people get situated. So we'll get started in a moment, and I will introduce everyone and get us rolling. All right. So get your coffee, get your tea, do whatever you need to do to take care of yourself and get grounded before we start our journey into the work. All right. So it's 10:05. Out of respect for your time and your energy and your presence, we're going to go ahead and get started. So let me begin by, I start everything off with the spirit of gratitude. And so I want to say thank you to you for making the choice to spend your time with us today, with Bean and myself today. Thank you for choosing out of your busy schedule, out of all the options and opportunities you had for what you could do with your time. You've chosen to be present with us and to talk about Black mental health and healing justice peer support, which is something I don't take for granted. And it means that you have a dedication to your own healing in the community, the healing of also your community and wellness. And so I just want to hold that and express gratitude to each of you for that. A couple of housekeeping things before we begin. One, everyone, you may see Rodney, who is here with us. Rodney is our ASL interpreter today, and so Rodney will be interpreting for us. And so I want to welcome Rodney. Welcome to the space. Thank you for being here and for providing your service for us today. In addition, we have MJ, who may not be on the screen right now, but MJ, they will also come in later and support in between intervals with Rodney offering ASL interpretation. So just welcome you both to the space. Thank you for being here, and thank you for the work that you do. Another couple of housekeeping pieces. For many folks who may be new to this tool, I just want to give you a couple of little pieces about the tool. If you're logging on your phone or on the computer, you might see on your left hand of your screen something called the Go-To Control Panel. On that control panel, there are a couple of different things that we're going to use throughout the course of our time together for the next 2 hours. One, you'll see a thing that says questions. If you ever have a question that you want to ask me or ask anyone, you can actually post that in there, and it will actually go to me, or you can also send it to another person in the room. You also will see on there is a little tab that says handouts. We have a lot of handouts that we're going to be using, things we want you to share, to download, to disperse, and give to other folks throughout the course of our training, but also afterwards. So make sure you check out those handouts, and I'll be referencing them. Next to your name, you'll see a couple of different icons. One of the icons is you can raise your hand. So sometimes during the course of me sharing today, you might have a question. So feel free to raise your hand, and I will be attentive to make sure I kind of respond to those hands as we can. We have a lot of content that goes through today, but we're also going to be having a lot of interactive discussion. And so in the spirit of that interactive discussion, I want to be really mindful that we do have ASL interpreters, so I want us to be mindful of speaking at a reasonable pace, at a slower pace, mindful pace. And that goes for myself too. I already had a conversation with Rodney and MJ about please get me together, because I have a tendency, my anxiety leads me to speak really fast at times. So if there are moments when I am speaking too fast, I also will be a part of the process of just learning to step back and slow myself down. So just want to name those pieces before we get started. All right. So that being said, we got a sense of what the control panel is. We've introduced some of the folks who will be in the room with us today. Let's get started with the first thing that we like to do in any Beam training for many people who may be new, is we start off by naming our intention. I'm a big believer of nothing without intention. Why am I here today? Why did you choose to come and spend these 2 hours with Beam? What is the purpose of our space today? And so what I will do is lead with the sharing one of my intentions. And what I want to invite folks to do is in the question box that you have, type in what your intentions are for your time today. Why are you here? What is your intention for this space? And I will read some of them out and affirm them as we go into creating this time together. All right. So I will say that my intention is to create heart space. When I say heart space, I mean a space for compassion, for understanding, for growth. My other intention is to craft a space for connection. I believe that we learn through connection. It's not just about me as a facilitator, or as a quote unquote teacher coming in and just sharing what I know. It's about us collaboratively coming together to share all the things that we know. And like you teaching me teaching you, all of us collaboratively learning, right? And so my two intentions are to create heart space, and the other one is to create connection. Those are my intentions for today. And so I want to invite you in the questions section of your chat box. Share with us some of your intentions. And what I'll do is I'll read out your name and your intention as well. Okay. So first intention I see from Valerie. Hi, Valerie. Valerie says, my intention is to be in community with other Black mental health healers. Ashe, affirm that intention. Peter says that my intention is to learn about being, peer support, and justice. Learning is your intention. Ashe, affirming that. Thank you for sharing. Other folks who want to share what your intention is for your time together, our time together. Lyndon says, my intention is to be a better facilitator of healing for my Black HIV positive brothers. Thank you, Lyndon. Ashe, affirming that. Yes. Darnell says, healing justice healers. Okay. Thank you for sharing, Darnell. Ashe. Deja says that my intention is to better understand and learn how our experiences as a Black community and collective can shape our approach to mental health, and then use that to uplift and empower one another. Ashe. Thank you for sharing, Deja. Tariq says, my intention is to grow in my peer support work. Ashe. Affirming that one. Jessica says, my intention is to educate myself. My intention is to use my lived mental health experience to help others. Ashe. Thank you, Jessica. And then Megan says, my intention is to listen deeply and to learn. Ashe, 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 ashe. Thank you all so much for sharing your intentions, holding those intentions, lifting those up, keeping those center in our spirit and our hearts as we move through this conversation, this discussion, this work to get today. And so grateful for you all for being present and for sharing. I think I have one last one, I'm sorry, from T. T says, my intention today is to allow myself to be facilitated today and notice how participation feels. All right, T. T is going into learning how it feels to be in participation. So Ashe, affirming that. Thank you all for sharing that. We're going to keep those at center, and we're going to move through this time together with those in mind. All right. So one thing we also do at the beginning, and you're going to recognize that with Beam's work, we do a lot of container building. We don't believe in just jumping in, talking about trauma and violence and all these pieces without us really doing some centering for ourselves. And so what I want to invite, we're going to take a little 20-second pause. And so what I just want to invite folks to do is wherever you are in your body, wherever you are in your life, to find some space to try to center and root yourself. Maybe you choose to connect with your breath. You might sit or adjust your body or your chair or wherever you are in a way that makes you feel more rooted and present. But we're just going to take about 30 seconds. I'm just going to pause, and we're just going to do that. Get whatever you need, do whatever you need, but just take a moment to be present with your body. And if you're feeling comfortable, if you're feeling discomfort, try to create some more comfort for yourself as we go into this subject matter. All right? All right. So that is just some small thing we do called a sacred pause. We don't have to force ourselves into any action. We just take a moment to pause and to be present with ourselves. Throughout the course of our time together, we will have numerous sacred pauses where I will invite you to take a pause with me, because as we attend to this really intense subject matter, things will be activated and awakened within us. We're not going to pretend in this very academic manner, like the subject matter we talk about does not have a direct impact on us. We're going to be really intentional about taking care of ourselves and taking care of our bodies and our spirits and whatever we need in the moment. So that means throughout the course of this, I want to invite you to give yourself permission to, if you need to get up and walk around, if you need to move around, if you need to maybe pause it for a moment and something may activate you, take care of yourself, right? We want to honor you to keep that center with yourself, or reconnect or connect with that center in yourself throughout the course of our work together. All right. All right. So, welcome to the space. This is a space that comes in a tradition and a legacy that honors the legacy of Black healers. We are honored when we come into the space as beings doing any work. We are acknowledging that we come from a lineage. We're acknowledging that you all in the room come from a lineage of folks who are healers, who are queer, trans folks, gender nonconforming folks, non-binary folks, who have healed through a variety of different modalities, from Christianity to Vodou to Islam, who have been herbalists, cooks, cleaners, preachers, tarot card readers. All of these different forms of healers, these different forms of healing, of support, of nourishment, we are part of that legacy. You are part of that legacy. And so whenever we craft space, we honor and we name that. We invite that knowledge, that resilience, that brilliance that our Black, our brown, our queer, our trans folks have that is collectively available to us. We invite that into the virtual space that we're all sharing together today, right? We are part of that legacy. You are part of the legacy. And so as we're doing our work today, I want to invite you to remember that we are doing the work of helping to address intergenerational trauma. We are doing the work of trying to chip away at the ancestral hurt that so many of our communities are living with and presently and navigating, right? And so I want to honor that this work is sacred and your time is sacred, and once again express gratitude to you and to our ancestors who and grandparents and great grand folks who have made it possible. So naming that, bringing that into the space, always critical. For many who may be not familiar with this training is a program of BEAM. BEAM is a national movement building, and grant making organization dedicated to the healing, wellness, and liberation of Black and marginalized communities. 3 different buckets for our work I'll go over briefly. Training. We believe that we have to train people across our communities, not just mental health professionals, but everyone in our communities needs to have understanding of healing justice and healing justice informed peer support. We all need skills and strategies and tools to support ourselves. We cannot just be up in the ivory tower or in this one space. And so we work hard to disseminate that information and knowledge within reason and within boundaries to really ensure our communities know how to refine and uplift the strategies we have, but also build new coping strategies and tools as well. We have a small grant making initiative. We have the Southern Healing Support Fund, where we support and resource Black healers, Black people doing mental health and healing wellness work in the rural South. And then we do organizational wellness and coaching, where we support community-based organizations and understanding that if your organization is toxic and creating distress, then you are actually creating toxicity and distress in the community. And so that's a little bit about our work. You can see our URL and our information on the right tab there to learn more about us and how we do things. All right. This person, I don't know, apparently he does stuff. Just kidding. So this is who I am. I'm not going to talk more about who I am. You can find that information out on the website on beam.community. A lot of experience healing justice work, working in Black communities. My practice is definitely informed by Black feminism, by yoga, and a variety of different other modalities, but you'll get to experience some of that. And I could tell you, I could show you more better than I can tell you, as my daddy would tell you all the time. All right. All right. First part of our time together, before, like I said, what we're doing right now is something I call container building. So when I call container building is before we can get into a really heavy conversation, we need to establish a container that can hold the conversation, right? Many of us have been in spaces where we've seen that people get ready to jump into this really hard, difficult topic, and that people assume it's just cerebral and it's not impacting other parts of our psyche, our emotionality. And we don't believe that. So we're going to spend actually the first time continuing what we started with the first sacred pause of just crafting some space where you're clear about the container that we're trying to hold together for us all. All right? So one of those parts of the container is called the Bean's core assumption. These guide and direct everything that we do in our work. All right, I'm going to go through them briefly because I want to make sure we once again have enough time to have our discussion and get through our work. All right. First one is every person present has eminent value. Eminent means inherent. It means that our value is because we are here, because we are present, not because we produce in a certain kind of way, not because our body looks like this way, not because we are able to do X, Y, Z. We are present, we are worthy, we are valuable. And so that means that all the things that come up in this conversation today are valuable, even when they are uncomfortable, even when they are messy. There's still an opportunity for us to grow and learn from them. Second, we address behaviors, ideas, and choices, never the core of who people are. Throughout the course of our time together, you might say something, or I might say something that may reflect an idea rooted in ableism, or homophobia, or transphobia. We try to be really intentional about really making a distinction between challenging the core of who people are and the behavior, their ideas, and their choices. So I might say to you, hey, that idea that you just shared is deeply rooted in misogyny. That choice that you made seems to reflect transphobia. Your behavior today was really misogynistic, right? So making the distinction between the core of who people are and their behavior, ideas, and choices, and creating the grace and the distance to allow them to be able to examine those things as we move through the work. That is a practice that I will embody. It is a practice I will invite you all to join me in embodying. Everything that we do today, from the sacred pause to the core assumptions, are tools that we offer for you all through modeling as tools that you can use in your own spaces and in your own communities. Third one, I think it is redundant or not useful to ask the question if somebody is racist, sexist, or homophobic or transphobic. I think a more useful question for us to ask ourselves is, where is the homophobia, transphobia, and ableism that you learned in your life showing up in your behavior, ideas, and choices? We are no longer asking if it is there. We are all people who have been raised and reared in systems that are deeply rooted in misogyny and transphobia and in homophobia. So the question is not, do we have them somewhere influencing our behaviors, but where are they? And how do we approach that with curiosity and honesty and openness, right? And so there will be moments, and once again, through our time together, we'll all be inviting us to think about, what did you learn about queer folks or trans folks, and how is that showing up in your behavior choices in life? What did you learn that taught you that certain people's lives are less valuable than other folks' lives, and how is that showing up? And it's not about you being a good or a bad person, but the reality of being a human being in this time and moment. Last one is, everyone's feelings are valid, even if the ideas that are informing those feelings aren't accurate. Distinction, right? I can feel sad or angry. Now, the story that I may be telling myself that may be leading me to be angry, I might be telling the story that my coworker Leroy is out to get me and XYZ. That story, not necessarily the same thing as, it may be fueling the feeling. The story is fueling the feeling, but the feeling is still valid, and the feeling still has to be extended to and expressed and moved through, even if the narrative may be inaccurate or not whole, right? We're going to talk a little bit more about what that looks like in our work together today as well. All right. Those are our core assumptions. We're going to guide those, keep those in the front. It will help you understand how I facilitate, and they will help, and it will hopefully maybe be useful for you in your own facilitation of peer support. So once again, we model the work. So this is a part of the training, right? We model it as opposed to just teaching it. We model it. So we're going to try to do this work. And we fail at it too. That's another piece of it too. We fail at it too, which is a part of the modeling, right? Learning how to fail and how to be accountable to that is a part of the work. All right. All right. So I know some of y'all, you've been sitting, I'm putting you to work. Sorry, time to get to work. Many of you know this work, so you know how it is when we do some beam work. I'm introducing you to the feelings wheel. In your handout, you have an opportunity to download a copy of the feelings wheel if you have any challenges witnessing this one here on the screen. The feelings wheel is a tool that we use for emotional literacy and emotional reclamation, and also emotional liberation in many cases, right? If you look at this tool, you see in the core it has mad, sad, scared, peaceful, all these core feelings, different iterations and nuances of those feelings outside of it. Many times in our world, we think we are talking about feelings when we're often talking about thoughts, or maybe we're talking about sensations. There's nothing wrong with naming our thoughts or our sensations. However, a part of the process we want to encourage folks to do is building emotional literacy of how we begin to name what we're feeling versus what we're thinking. So, example, you might see me and say, "Hey, Yolo," and I'm like, you say, "Hey, Yolo, how are you feeling?" I might tell you, "I just feel like I gotta hurry up and run to the store. Then I gotta go pick up the kids. Then I go check in on my grandma." I can tell you all those things, but that wasn't a feeling. And that's what we often hear a lot of people do. Like they tell you a whole story or a narrative, right? The feeling might be anxious. The feeling might be overwhelmed. The feeling might be frustrated. Naming our feelings, and not just naming them cerebrally, but naming them and also where they show up in our bodies thematically, I believe, is a critical practice for us, particularly as Black and queer and trans folks, as Black folks in general, who've been disembodied from our emotional selves, who've been taught that our emotions are not valid, who've been gaslit historically and continue to be gaslit about our feelings. The process of checking in and saying, "I feel this frustration and I feel this in my chest and in my stomach, or I feel this in my thighs and my hips," is a part of us reclaiming our bodies and also trying to challenge the disembodiment that comes along with being a Black and marginalized person in this world. It's an opportunity for us to go back into ourselves. So and a couple of things I like to say about feelings as well. So once again, feelings, you can't control your feelings. None of us can control our feelings. We manage our behavior, right? I can be angry all day. My anger is valid. I can have that feeling. If I start throwing chairs and tables at people in an inappropriate context, the behavior is the problem. The behavior is the challenge, not the feeling. The feeling of anger is still is just present with me. I have that feeling, right? Another important piece I always tell people that I think is useful when we think about how we talk about feelings. In some languages, we don't say "I am sadness" or "I am sad," which in English language we do say this. In some interpretations of different languages, people say "I have sadness." I have frustration. For example, in French, if you translate literally, people don't say I am angry. They say I have anger. There's something somatic cognitive that happens for many people when you start saying I have a feeling versus I am a feeling, right? So even a reframing of how we think about our emotions and feelings can be really powerful. So as a part of our practice, which is critical for all of you on this call, because we come to this call to talk about peer support. And I'm going to let you know that one of the biggest things I'm going to reiterate over and over again is that in order for us to be able to show up for people, in order for a part of our practice of showing up for people is we have to practice the art of showing up for ourselves. Because when I show up for myself and when I'm present in what's going on within me, I can be more mindful and present to what's going on for other folks and how I'm being activated, but also what's happening in our dynamic. If I am moving from a place where I am going the superhero complex, where I feel like it's just I'm out here to save everybody else and not really cognizant of what my own motivation and drivers are, then I am sometimes going to create harm for other folks because I'm not being attentive to what's going on within me, right? A lot of us are on the work to avoid doing our own work, and that is sometimes what makes us not sustainable and makes us not effective. So, practice today. In your chat box, we're going to check in and invite everyone in the room to check in who would like about what they're feeling in this moment. And as well as where you're feeling that in your body. All feelings are welcome. There's no good feeling. There's no bad feeling. All feelings are information. Our body, our spirit, our energy sends us information. Are we paying attention? Are we listening to what's coming up for us? And what is it saying that we need? So as a part of our first practice, I want to invite everyone, once again, in the question box, type in, what's coming? What are you feeling right now? How are you feeling? Any feeling is welcome. And where are you feeling that in your body? How is it showing up in your body? Or how is it showing up in a sensation? It might be a sensation you're feeling. Maybe you don't know what you're feeling. And also I want to honor that not knowing what you're feeling is great information because it's all information, right? So even if you're like, I don't know how I feel, okay, that's great. That means they're like, hey, that's just some information for me to know. Well, I don't know how I feel. I don't know right now, but I'm gonna sit with that and let me breathe through that and figure that out. Maybe it'll come to me another time, right? So just being mindful of that piece, all right? So I'm gonna start reading out some people who are sharing their feelings. And once again, all feelings are welcome. All feelings are present. This is not to fix feelings, which often means to repress feelings. This is just for us to craft a space for us to be present with whatever it is and just be present with it. So, all right. I have Imade says, Imade's feeling slightly anxious and stomach tense. Thank you for sharing, Imade. Darnell says, I'm feeling overwhelmed and some sense of uncertainty. Thank you for sharing, Darnell. Valerie says, I have deep rage and sadness regarding Ahmaud Arbery and due also to having a white client maybe being elitist with me, and I feel it in my throat. Yeah, thank you for sharing, Valerie. Megan says, I'm feeling focused and inspired. Tariq says, I'm feeling pensive and peaceful. I love the tension there. Thank you for sharing. Lee says, I'm feeling inspired. Alexis says, I'm carrying heaviness. It feels heady and it's in my chest. Thank you for sharing. Takarja, I hope I'm saying your name correctly. Please correct me if I'm not. You can let me know the correct pronunciation. But Takarja says, I feel energetic right now being on this webinar. Thank you for being here. Thank you for that. And then we'll take one or two more feelings. Just how are people feeling in this moment? We're just going to do a check-in with our bodies and our spirits. What's coming up for us? Oh, that was correct. I'm glad I got that right, Takarja. Deja says, I have this feeling of being overwhelmed and uncertain and somewhat helpless. I feel tension in my stomach and between my eyebrows and my shoulders. And then Francesca says, I am feeling hopeful but overwhelmed in my chest. Matazia says, I am feeling energetic and needing rest. And then Jessica says, I am feeling challenged and manifests through lack of sleep and leading to headaches. All right. Naming, holding, all the feelings we feel in this virtual space are valid. They are real. They are information. They are information that can help us guide us towards what's going on in our world around as well as within us. We are holding these feelings as sacred, as information from ourselves, and we're keeping them centered as we move through our content today, right? And so as you move, you might see the feelings shift and move. Pay attention to that. Pay attention to what they're saying that you need. Pay attention to what your body's saying. They're like, hey, I need some movement. Hey, I need massage. Hey, I need a breath. Whatever it is that you know your body more than anybody else does, because that's where you live, right? And so being present with those feelings, all right? So I want to thank everyone for our first exercise, for sharing your feelings and being in touch. And I want to invite you to take this tool beyond this moment and this workshop. Think about how you can incorporate it into your life and into your peer support with the people you love and care for every day. All right. Really brief feed on managing discomfort. I want to invite people, if you feel uncomfortable, to like really kind of ask yourself, what is the discomfort telling you? What do I need to do to take care of myself? What do I feel this in my body? Just kind of what we already reiterated. Just want to make sure I just named that piece there. All right. So that concludes our container building. It's now time to get into the core of our work. I want to thank each of you for sharing, for being present and open, all those people who responded to chat. We're going to have some opportunities for everyone to kind of talk to me, who would like to talk to me. I'm not going to make you talk if you don't want to talk to me. You don't want to speak to me. It's all right. But we're going to have some chance for some conversation today. I'm really excited about. So today's objectives. This is a 201. So we're going to be going a little bit deeper into some concepts and re-examining the one-on-one stuff, but not spending a lot of time there. But we're going to review some one-on-one concepts. We're going to also explore the moment. We're going to talk about some of the things people have raised about the current moment in terms of what people are feeling as it relates to COVID-19, as it relates to a variety of different challenges people are navigating. We're going to hold and name that, and then we're going to talk about some collective strategies, right? So I'm going to share some pieces, and I'm going to invite other folks to share pieces, and I'm going to share some more pieces, and I'm going to you all share some more pieces. We're going to have a conversation because you all are doing amazing, powerful things in your communities with yourselves and with other folks. We're doing work too. I'm not going to dismiss my work. We're doing work too. I'm doing work. All of it's really brilliant, and we all can learn when we just kind of share. Like, what are we doing? Oh, so that's what we're going to spend some time together doing today, and getting some tips and strategies from folks, from these folks who are on the live in the room. All right. Quick review. This is definitely the moment when I know that Rodney, MJ, if I begin to speak too quickly, please feel free to send me girl, you're doing a lot, do whatever you need to do to slow me down, because I want to make sure I move through this quickly so that we can have enough time for the conversation, other pieces, all right? One thing that's really important to name For folks who may be new, who maybe have never been to a two-on-one, to a one-on-one with Beam. So in Beam, we are very clear and explicit that all Black lives are valuable. That means that Black queer folks, trans folks, disabled folks, Christian, Muslim, we hold space for all Black folks, and we acknowledge that transphobia, heterosexism, ableism create mental health distress, or what we know to be as health itself as a construct. And so that is a big piece of how we gauge the work and a lot of what we talked about in our one-on-one. Some brief bullet points about our perspectives on health as a construct, right? So health is amorphous, ambiguous, and often used as a tool of social control. Mental health in the Western tradition is deeply rooted in ableism, transphobia, and racism. Mental health in this country is designed for wealthy or as a tool to feed the criminal legal system often. And even still, as we can acknowledge the history of harm that psychology, psychiatry, and much of what we know to be eugenics, all these other pieces of mental health have created so much harm to Black, queer, disabled, trans communities, we can acknowledge that within the framework and research, there are still some useful things. And that when we think about certain tools like the DSM, the Diagnostic Statistical Manual, kind of the Bible of psychiatry, is a tool that can be used to create a lot of harm, but a tool in the right hands that could be helpful in helping us understand the ways in which trauma and harm and generational trauma is showing up in our bodies, spirits, and souls, right? So we're holding that piece. We spent a lot of time talking about that in the one-on-one. So we're going to brief through this to two-on-one, but just so you know, this is where you at, this is where we coming from, all right? Uplifting folks who do amazing work and who are like the progenitors of the work we do today. I'm going to lift up Kara Page, who is part of the Kindred Healing Justice Collective, but also a great healer in our communities. And I always like to lift up some quotes from folks and bring them into the room because healing justice, which is a framework that we see ourselves in the lineage of, is something that was generated by Black, queer, trans, disabled women, Latino women, immigrant folks. And so we hold, and we want to make sure we bring many of those folks into the space as we do our work. And so this is a quote from Kara. Kara says that talks about there are traumatic incidents of violence on a cumulative level that we are holding on to individual and collective bodies. Health doesn't cut it, because what I'm seeing is a rise of people who return to school to become acupuncturists, massage therapists, Reiki masters, and I'm surrounded by elders who lived through HIV. People are looking to do more healing, more integrative work, because they saw the healthcare system was never designed for us or by us. And so I'm bringing in Kara's work because it is important when we talk about healing justice today, that we understand that it's a different framework from what many of us who may be trained in the Western clinical tradition have been taught. It is a more leftist, a more liberated framework than this kind of individual behavioral approach to mental health and healing. So I'm just lifting up Kara's work and naming that. We went a lot into that in the one-on-one. This is just a review, so you know. So if you want to get that one-on-one video, we'll send the link out to you all. We spent a lot of time talking about everybody's work. This is just the review, all right? All right, so one thing we did in our one-on-one was talk about our peer support model, right? So in your handouts, you have copies of these two tools. It's actually the same tool, excuse me. One is just a social media version. The other one is the full version in a PDF form. Lapis is our peer support model in terms of the framework that we encourage folks to use to kind of like help guide them through offering peer support, right? Lapis, as many of you may know, is a gemstone, a semi-precious blue stone, found in many parts of the world, known to be in Afghanistan, known to be in parts of Brazil, also in Denver, and in different cultures, different indigenous cultures, people had different associations with what the stone represented. In some cultures, people believe the stone represented communication with the divine, a sacred spiritual communication. And so when we were developing our tool, we thought it was a really beautiful kind of correlation to what we're trying to do with our peer support, which is really create divine healing, divine communication, right? I'm going to go through this briefly. Like, once again, this is the review. I want you all to look at that. I want you to look at this and spend more time with it later, because if you haven't done the one-on-one, this might be a new tool to you. For all of my people who did the one-on-one, you've probably seen it before, and you're like, yeah, YOLO, I know. All right, I'm going to go through it briefly. I'm going to do the shorter version, the Instagram version, which is on the left, all right? Like peace support model. First thing we invite people to do is to listen and assess for distress or harm. All my Black folks, I love us. Listen, don't preach. Don't tell them about how you made it to the mountaintop. Don't tell them how you found the glory. That's not always the first place we need to go to, right? We need to listen sometimes and assess for the stress or harm. So we listen actively. We're not listening to respond. We're listening to hear, to be present for folks, which is a practice that we all have to learn to cultivate. We spend a lot of time talking about it in the one-on-one. I'm not going to go too deeply into it now, but it is a practice. If needed, contact a warm line, a local mental health informed responders, trusted community members, our mobile crisis units for support. There are a lot of variety of different options besides just immediately rushing to 911. Find out those resources in your community. If you have a mobile crisis unit, if you have like a warm line, local mental health informed responders, find those folks. We all know so well that for many of our folks, if we rush to call anyone not thoughtfully, it can lead to harm for many of our folks if they are in distress, right? And so we want you to be thoughtful about who you're calling and contacting if you need further support around supporting someone who may be in distress. We want to affirm the experience of the person that we're supporting, right? Their feelings are valid. Don't minimize or refute their feelings. Reminding ourselves we can affirm feelings without agreeing with narrative, right? So someone might come to me and say that they are really feeling sad. I can affirm their sadness and hear their sadness and their fatigue and frustration. I can validate that without validating the story they may be telling themselves. And the story might be that I'm worthless, that I quote unquote fucked up so bad and nobody likes me, nobody cares about me, right? I don't have to even touch that narrative. I can affirm the feeling, making that distinction, right? We don't want to go in and be like, yeah, you're right. Nobody does care about that. That's not what we need to affirm. We need to affirm, be like, I hear that you're feeling sad. I hear that. That's real. Like holding the place of the feeling, not being mindful of the narrative and not feeling like we, as peers, it's not always our job to go into the narrative and kind of like take it on, right? Because that sometimes can lead us down a very slippery slope. P, partner to navigate care and seek services. Partnership is so critical. For many of us folks who are living with mental conditions, there's this ongoing conversation about people with mental conditions' ability to advocate for themselves, right? About agency and rights. And so when we talk about partnering as opposed to going in with the cape on, we talk about the fact that, like, to what degree can I participate in this process, and what degree are you engaging me and my agency in terms of what I want to do? So that means that you don't just throw a whole bunch of phone numbers at me if I said that I don't want to call anybody. Maybe you ask me what I need in this moment, and maybe what I need in this moment is just you to be present with me and play video games with me. Maybe what I need in this moment is for you to go get my meds out of the kitchen for me and just kind of sit and eat with me. What is needed, like partnering, right? Not the superhero. Sometimes in the social worker kind of world, we get socialized to be like, jump in and save them. It's like, actually, that's really dangerous and not helpful to a lot of folks. So partnership, right? Building a partnership, which takes time. It's not always immediate, but it's more effective than the short term. I'm just going to do whatever I can to help navigate my own anxiety and not really centering that person. Initiating self and care community care plans. For a lot of our folks in our communities, we realize a lot of folks in our communities are not always able to get mental health care or get to mental health care immediately. And so sometimes our communities have to navigate care plans about how to support them. Even if they are able to get into mental health care support services, they may be limited in terms of their capacity to actually support someone. So we also need to make sure we map out whole care plans for folks with accountability partners and community partners to support them in their wellness. And then S is just seek out competent professional as needed, help is needed, which means seek out folks who can support you, right? Sometimes that means calling the warm line, the mental health line. Sometimes it means calling a trusted auntie, big mama, whoever it is who can offer support and help you get to maybe other professional support, whether that's a psychologist, social worker, or whoever that is, trusted community member. All right? So we spent a whole 2 hours on this last time. If you missed it, it was good. People had lots of things to say. We had a lot of good conversation. It is our tool that we use. And I will take let's think about 2 questions in the chat box before we open it up for some conversation on the next piece. If anybody have any questions about this framework, I'll just kind of get that piece. Amada says, I would like a one-on-one recording. We got you. Peter says, thanks for including the California Pure Warm Line. Thanks to California Pure Warm Line for existing. Awesome. Any questions about our framework before I move on? I'll send the 101 link to everyone as well in the follow-up email. Valerie says, really appreciate this workshop and y'all's framework. Thank you, Valerie. And Heather says, tips on how to support peers to prepare for being personally triggered when trying to support another person. Come on, Heather. Heather, Heather's been sneaking in my curriculum. Heather knows this is coming, but Heather's been sneaking curriculum. Thank you for bringing that in the room, Heather. We're going to talk a lot about that, about how we have to manage ourselves. So thank you, Heather. I appreciate that. So there we go. All right. So holding that, we're going to move on. Tools in the handout. The handouts are not made for you to just save it on your desktop, y'all. They're meant for you to share them with folks. Send them to your folks, not just when the crisis happens. Don't wait till the crisis happens. Have these conversations with the folks in your community beforehand, right? There are things on our tool and models that you might be like, I want to add something else to it. Do what you need to do to support yourself and your community, but be proactive about it if you can. Okay? All right. All righty. All righty. So I'm going to go to the next one. All right. So now we're going to talk about peer support. Another piece we talked about last time we had our session. We have to get away from the foolishness of pretending like we don't have internalized ableism around mental health. So in order for you to be effective, in order for us to be effective in our work, we have to be really honest about the terrible things we have learned and been taught about mental health and people living with mental health conditions. The lies, the misrepresentation, the over-exaggerations, and the realities that are still difficult and hard. But we have to be honest about how those things have influenced our perception and ability to engage our own mental health conditions, our own mental health and wellness, and also support other folks, right? We have heard many things in Black communities around Black people living with schizophrenia. And the immediate image that comes into your mind when I say that is a part of what needs to be interrogated, right? When we talk about personality disorders, what comes to your mind? How does that influence your ability to show up? What exaggerated stereotypes have we created that dehumanize folks? You will not be an effective peer support person if you are not able to be honest with yourself. And I want to say honest with yourself, don't go talking to folks about, who have those mental health conditions about, I thought y'all were terrible. Don't do that because you're going to get cussed out because I'm going to cuss you out. I'm scared. Cuss you out. Take some time with trusted folks to process and move through that work. And take some time to be honest, because as you process and move through them, and as they become illuminated as the fictitious things they are, and also when the things that are serious concerns come up, you'll be able to build more skills around those pieces, right? And so we talked about this in the 101. It'll come back in a little bit more today, but I want to be honest with you all and very clear that this is not a peer support model that assumes that you're the superhero who doesn't have any stuff. We all have internalized ableism. Here is your work. Take this work beyond this moment. I don't care if you're living with a mental condition or not. We all have learned some really things that have said that certain people do not have value or worth in ways that can be really harmful in terms of how we support our community. All right. I'm going to leave that there. All right. So what is peer support? Y'all know peer support when you get your homies on a stoop and y'all be talking. No, I'm just kidding. Peer support is a range of practices offered when peers provide knowledge, experience, emotional, social, or practical to help each other. We often argue and deem that peer support is our biggest form of emotional support, right? Healing justice, we didn't talk about this session, but from last session. So healing justice is an embodied approach to wellness that centralizes the dismantling of all systems of oppression on a structural, psychic, intergenerational, spiritual level, along with collective safety and liberation for all humans, the earth, and life. That's the very condensed version, all right? For folks who may be the first time hearing about what is healing justice, all right? So now I have a couple questions I want to answer in the chat box. I want to get to our discussion portion because the way I'm going to structure this is I'm going to have maybe one or two people share. Then I have some more stuff I want to share with you off the 201 when we deepen some pieces. Then we're going to have some more folks share. Then I'm going to deepen. I'm going to just kind of piggyback back and forth. I want to answer these questions that I have here first. All right. Lee says, what advice do you have for people that want partnership with their mate but don't know exactly how to say it? Okay. We can talk about that in a moment. I'm going to bring that in the room. And let's see, Lee says, I'm referring to people that have mental health challenges and they don't know how to ask for their partner to be more of a partner and not a superhero. Oh, it's a good piece, Lee. We want to bring that in the room because I'm not the person who answers all the questions. We got more knowledge in this room than just me. So I'm going to put them out there. We can talk about them. All right. See, CJ says, how do we navigate our own feelings? And we'll talk about those pieces too. So, okay. So got those questions noted, you all. Feelings, and we'll bring those in. What I want to do now is hear from you all. So share your name. I'm gonna, if you want to talk and have this conversation with folks, raise your hand next to your little icon, and share with us your name. We're gonna keep it silly with one thing, your favorite snack, and then what are you struggling with currently in supporting others? I also want to know from you what skills, tools, or practices have you learned that you can share with us that are working for you, right? So one, your name, what you're snacking on, because we know everybody's snacking on something. You're snacking on something. What are you struggling with in your peer support? What is something you're trying to figure out, right? And then what skills, tools, or practices can you share with us, if any? You can answer one or two of those questions. And then what we'll do is we'll have other folks respond to those questions. So when you raise your hand, I will unmute you. I want you to be mindful, as Rodney and MJ made me aware of in the beginning, to try to speak at a manageable pace, a slow, moderate pace. I haven't gotten told off yet by Rodney or anybody, so I'm assuming I'm doing okay, which is a miracle. So thank you for that. So let's go to our attendees, and please raise your hand if you'd like to share. All righty. All right. So I'm going to the bottom list. I see Valerie first. So Valerie, I'm going to unmute you. It takes about a second before the system kicks it in. But hi, Valerie. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi.
Hi, thanks so much for this workshop. So I'm Valerie. I use she, her pronouns. I'm based in Chicago. Currently, I'm drinking a green smoothie. And in terms of what I'm struggling with in supporting others, I guess I would say when your clients have like offensive, like when their problems show up in very direct ways against you, like for example, working with a white client, and I think there's some like elitism that's coming through. I'm an LCSW. In the past, she's worked with a psychologist, and I think there's sort of a hierarchy within the field of if you went to school longer, you perhaps yeah, so that, and then also just like how do you deal with that generally? Like I've worked with Black male clients who had a lot of internalized stuff and issues with Black women, so navigating that. In terms of tools or practices I can share and offer, in my own personal life, I have a organizing background, and also I'm a performance artist, so I act, and I'm also a poet. So incorporating that into talk therapy, I could definitely offer that.
And so make sure I heard you correctly, Valerie. You said so you incorporate a lot of poetry into your therapeutic with your clients. Can you share us how you do that? I'm curious.
Yeah, just just creative interventions in general. So I work with trauma survivors of sexual assault, and so the more I learn about like neurobiology and trauma, the more I think about and realize sort of the limitations of language sometimes. So like really trying to do more body-based approaches, and then just really, if someone has a creative practice already, I invite them to think about like things, color, text, like what does it feel like, meaning other things out, sort of yeah. So and also I do have a couple colleagues who are art therapists, and so I collaborate with them to just ask about how to incorporate like things like colored pencils and art making into my practice, but I haven't done that as much.
Love that. Thank
And
you
I
for
also, I
sharing that,
can do
Valerie.
this.
That's
You're welcome. I was just going to say one last thing. I did a
Mhm.
podcast with my work about creative interventions where we had a conversation about this. And if folks are interested, I could um, put that in the chat box and that could be dispersed too, because we just recently did that.
Yes, please do. If you all have resources, share them in there. What I'll do is after we finish the workshop, I'll send that in the follow-up email with all those links because we love to learn and I love the work that you're doing, Valerie. It sounds amazing. Thank you for sharing. Um, two pieces I will share, and it's interesting you mentioned this. So next month, just to keep, if you're interested, we're actually doing a training called Managing Anti-Blackness in Clinical Practice, which is really actually designed for. We recognize that for many of us who went to social work school or psychology school, you might have learned diversity in social work or these kind of like classes that are really geared towards white people to teach them how to navigate people of color. But there's never any training for Black or Latinx or API folks to learn how to manage white folks in clinical practice and white privilege. And so we're actually doing a workshop next month with Dr. Dion Bates, who's our senior mental health advisor, where we'll be doing work talking about how do we manage whiteness and white privilege in clinical interactions, which is a beast, it's a reality, right? And so thank you for bringing that to the room, Valerie. I know one of the things that we've been talking about as we've been developing that curriculum is that we have to recognize, and I'm sure you know this, sometimes we have to like recognize that certain clients are not for us. And we also have to like, recognizing that piece and then also having a support system for ourselves to process and navigate, to help us navigate the nuances of those situations because there's no one size fits all about how to kind of go about doing that in a clinical setting with someone who's a Black man who's saying really misogynistic things or a white person who's being very racist in the interaction. And so it's very nuanced. But Dr. Dion Bates and I will have a lot of really deep in that conversation and talk about some strategies that we've seen as helpful. So thank you for bringing that, Valerie. So I can give you a more succinct answer. If other folks have more succinct resources or tools, please do share. But those are some of the pieces that we are thinking about and how we have been thinking about the work. So thank you, Valerie. All right. Anyone? So I think I'm going to go up the thing next and see who else wants to check in about what they're supporting. I love the poetry piece. It's amazing. Yeah, I'm coming up there looking for hands. Any other hands? Let's see, Jessica Carter. Jessica, I'm going to unmute you, and you should be able to speak now. Jessica, can you
Good
hear me?
morning. Yes,
Good
can you hear
morning.
me?
I can.
My
Hi.
name is Jessica. I have a 10-year-old practicing violin in the background, so that's what you hear.
Okay.
I use she and her pronouns. My favorite snack is watermelon. And what I am struggling with, I come from a really large family, and rather than being the little cousin, I'm the auntie of literally my whole community for several reasons. Um, I have an aunt with 19 children, uncle with 23 children. So, I mean, when I say a large family, I have a really large family. So, what I struggle with, I'm always a resource to everyone. If you're looking for something or you need something, they say call auntie. However, I struggle with being totally depleted and not having any resources for myself when I need something.
Absolutely. Jessica, you still there?
Yes. And
Okay. No. Okay.
And I'm just a person that is in therapy, trying to better myself and also, uplift my community, my extra large village, as you would say.
Mm-hmm.
And that's all.
No, thank you for sharing, Jessica. And once again, I know I'm responding to pieces, but if other people want to weigh in on these pieces too, Jessica, just thank you for sharing that piece. And I think that the reality is that for a lot of us, we are in communities and families where we're kind of expected to be that on-call person, and we don't have a lot of on-call people for ourselves. I will say that, this is actually really going to come up in the next section we talk about. building up our own peer support network is really a challenge sometimes for us who do the care for other people because we're not always used to the vulnerability of being cared for. It can be discomfort for us, and we have to build that muscle to be like, oh, I'm going to lecture lean on someone and let them see that I'm more vulnerable, let them support me. And taking the time to build out a care network is a practice of trial and error. But I think as you lift it up, it's so critical. And I also want to lift up and affirm that you said you're in therapy. So that means that you do have some support. Like, I want to acknowledge that support and that you've been doing that work to support yourself. And we actually have some really great tools that we have, self-care and community care plans that really invite our peer support folks to understand that the stronger our support system is around our boundaries, around our just having a place to emotionally process and move through, the more we can show up for folks that we care for in ways that are in integrity and honor and dignity. And so I know that's something that I have struggled with, Jessica. I continue to struggle with, making sure my support system is solid. I think it's ongoing work, but I just want to, encourage you. And we can share some resources also to maybe be helpful, but also to uplift what you've been doing. That you've been doing some, you've been getting some support, and maybe invite you to think about where are places in which I have not been willing to allow myself to be supported, if there are any, which I think sometimes shows up for a lot of caretaker folk. So thank you for sharing, Jessica. All right. So I'm going to now move into the next set. What did I just do? Just happened. Oh, there we go. All right. I'm going to move into the next section, and then I'm going to talk about some things that people brought up, and then we're going to come back and talk to some more folks. All right. So keep your hand up. If your hand is up, I'm coming back to you. All right. As we're talking about, one of the best ways to take care of others is embodying care for ourselves. When we practice with ourselves, we can better show up for others. If I haven't really worked on my shaming around emotional health, it can be very difficult for me to do that for other folks. For some people are very good to do it for everybody else and not doing it for themselves. But for a lot of us, it goes hand in hand. So really being acknowledged in that piece, right? So one thing I really want to invite, so this part of this 201 is really deepening and going into what are you doing to manage your own care? Because we're in this moment, you all, where there's all this stress happening, and some of us are catapulted into action, but the action is always outward, and it's not really taking time to self-examine. And so this is a tool that we created from our Black Mental Health and Healing Justice training that really gets people thinking about, how are you coping? What are your coping strategies? How do you diversify your coping strategies, right? Because there's nothing wrong with, I believe that we need to have as many coping strategies as we can. It's about our relationship to those coping strategies, right? Any coping strategy can become problematic if it's overused, right? But it's really about what do we have in our arsenal and our tool belts, right? So as you see on this diagram, you have 6 different ones we've listed and named, right? Some of them we've done together. We did emotional awareness, right? Things that help us foster emotional connection, like the feelings wheel, naming, expressing the feelings, journaling. Valerie talked about coloring and poetry today. Those are other pieces that are kind of helping us cultivate emotional awareness. Redirecting, activities that give us a different focus, art, video games, cooking, reading, learning a new skill. Mindfulness, right? Nurturing. I think it's really important to name the difference between nurturing and soothing, which Dr. Bates often talks about in our workshops together. So we talk about nurturing. Nurturing is often something that helps enrich ourselves. Soothing can be like that temporary relief of discomfort, but we have to be careful with soothing, because soothing can sometimes become compulsive or excessive, or soothing can sometimes perpetuate shame and guilt. So let me give you an example of a nurturing versus soothing. A soothing activity might be that I'm stressed out, I'm going to eat a gallon of ice cream. Ain't nothing wrong with eating a gallon of ice cream. Probably won't eat one later, keeping it real. But nothing wrong with eating a gallon of ice cream. But if I'm lactose intolerant, right? Maybe I feel shame because I overate so much. If the activity creates shame and guilt, if the activity creates bodily harm in some way or discomfort for us, then we begin to wonder: are we over soothing? Is it now something that's not really about nurturing? Because nurturing is with a nurturing activity, after I've done it, I feel fulfilled, I feel enriched, I feel lifted, I feel restored. Versus soothing, it's I placated the feeling, I've numbed it a little bit. I had that butter pecan ice cream, and with the sprinkles. Really thinking about that butter pecan ice cream with the sprinkles right now, but I'm not gonna do that. But anyway, I had that butter pecan ice cream with the sprinkles, And it may have soothed that, but maybe I went too hard, and now I'm feeling really uncomfortable, and I feel like, oh, I shouldn't have ate all that. I know that doesn't feel good for me. Those kind of things often are connected to soothing, right? So just being mindful of those particular distinctions with those pieces, but really being mindful, like, how are you coping? What are you doing to cope? And I would love to hear from folks in the chat box, like, what are you all doing to cope, to manage yourself? Have you been thoughtful about your coping strategies, right? What does that look like? And so, like, building your plan for your coping will help you support more people. But if you don't have that integrated, it's not going to be effective. You're going to be less effective. So I see some folks with some statements they have. Valerie says that was helpful. Thank you. Awesome. And thank you, Valerie, for posting the podcast link. Lee, I see your hand. I'm going to come to your hand. Oh, I got you. Coming to you now. I also have a statement from Mefti. Mefti says, watermelon and strawberries, struggling with helping loved ones who aren't ready to help themselves. Tool I use is modeling the community care support plan. As I share more of my mental health journey, I find it helps normalize vulnerability and healing in my relationship. Ashay, thank you for sharing that. I'm going to go to Lee. I'm going to find you. There's a lot of people in here. Where's your name, Lee? Where'd you go? There you are. All right. Lee, I'm unmuting you.
Uh-oh. Okay. Hello. Can you hear me?
Hey, I can. Hey, Lee.
Hey, awesome. Okay. So, yeah, first off, thank you so much for creating this space and opportunity. The work that you're doing is absolutely beautiful, and I'm just really excited. So I was just kind of responding to what you had asked earlier, and I wrote down a couple of things. My name is Lee Felicia Dilbert. My favorite snack is, well, what I just ate was a piece of toast with some blackberry jelly, so that was pretty good. And
Okay.
one way, one way that I'm struggling, excuse me, with supporting others is as a life coach, I work with a lot of different women with a myriad of different perspectives and interests and all things. And I love working with all my clients, but my mamas have a special place in my heart. And what I'm sharing may speak to what the other young lady was speaking about. And so what the dilemma that I've been having in supporting them is that, rightfully so, mothers are the unseen caretakers a lot of times, and also not given enough credit for all the things that they do. So I have mamas that are very interested and healing, empowerment, enlightenment, all the things. But, realistically can't commit to meeting 1 hour a week, to intentionally seek help. So what I have been trying to do, and I developed a way to connect with them in a more flexible way that can meet their desire of wanting coaching and also help. And, I love to do my work. So I wanted to know from anybody if they have any additional suggestions on this, but I shifted my practice with them. For example, if they reach out to me and text me and have some time, a pocket of time to talk, for a certain particular rate, I am available to them. I make myself available. Certain packages are, offer different things, but that's one thing. Another one is if they need to meet late at night or super early in the morning, I'm willing. I also have scheduled empowerment text messages for those that really want to get, something and that works. You know what I mean? Sometimes I record myself and send them that video for them to have, as well as like a audio. But I'm just really trying to meet them and empower them that it's not, to not have so much guilt or shame about taking care of their responsibilities, and even some things they don't really care to be taken care of. However, being available in those missing gaps that there's, because it's beautiful to want to grow and be better. And I'm sure you have come into different things like this with your clients. So that's one area that I'm struggling to support and striving. And then
Yeah.
the
Thank you
skill.
I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, I'm almost done.
No, go ahead,
And
go ahead, go ahead.
the skill that I have learned, Yolo, that I feel can be very helpful to people, it really has helped me. Whenever I'm talking to someone and I sense a shift, I'll call it a trigger for lack of a better word, when I sense that shift, that triggered emotion, um, I'll say in a very gentle way, hey, I acknowledged something just happened right then. And then I'll use the following language immediately. Is it all right with you if I share something that might be helpful? You know what I mean? So not immediately, but
Mm-hmm.
gently, like it's a gentle, almost like not a walking on eggshells, but more like a gentle dance, because because of my work and what I love, you probably the same way. You notice when people are having different emotions. And so I do my very best to deliver those words gently. And that
Or
works a
late.
lot better than saying, okay, what's wrong? Okay, what's up with
Mm-hmm.
that?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, what just
Mm-hmm.
happened?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I just wanted to share that.
Oh, is anyone else? Lee? Lee?
Yes,
Are
can
you
you hear
there?
me? I'm here.
Hello?
Uh-oh, can you hear me?
Think I lost Lee's
Uh-oh.
audio. There you go.
Can
There
you
you go. You broke out for a little bit. I can hear you
Okay,
now.
sorry about that. Okay, yeah. Did you catch the last part?
The last part I caught was you were talking about the ways in which you kind of acknowledge when something is activated or triggered is the language you use, like that you kind of gently acknowledge it, name that something has shifted as a kind of gentle way of framing that, as opposed to like what happened or what's wrong.
Yeah,
That was what I got. Is that correct?
exactly.
Okay.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
Like what's
Oh.
wrong with you? That kind of language
Mhm.
shuts
Mhm.
people
Mhm.
down.
Mhm.
Nothing is wrong with them.
Yeah.
They're having
Absolutely.
emotion. So, I know sometimes depending on your relationship with people, that's not something that I say it differently. If I'm talking to a family
Mhm.
member and they're not trying to hear that, I'll be like, hey, 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 okay,
Mhm.
I'm coming from a place of love. But not
Mhm.
fussing. You know what I mean. I think you got
I do. Yeah, no,
it.
I hear you absolutely. Thank you for sharing. Lee, there were so many jewels and gems in what you shared, and like one thing that I also want to offer is that so one I want to offer if other folks have feedback that you'd like to share with Lee about strategies to support mothers who are struggling with like guilt or shame around how they're showing up in the world or how the expectations of mothers in the world, because that's one piece I want to make sure we drive home. Our culture puts unrealistic, deeply racist, deeply sexist expectations on Black mothers in terms
Yes.
of what Black mothers are expected to do. Our community, a part of our work for all of us of all genders and backgrounds, is to really to transform and uplift and move away the big burden of emotional labor that we have put on Black women to hold everything down in our communities. It is literally contributing not only to guilt and shame, but to all kinds of bodily harm to Black women. And so I think there's a call to action that needs to be in our healing justice work. There's a call to action that says that those things that you were talking about, Lee, that like so many Black women are struggling with, so many mothers are struggling with, are really perpetuated by our culture and some of the judgment and shame that we let lead in our community. Right,
Exactly.
and so we have to challenge those concepts, and it is it's deeply connected to misogyny. Men, non-binary folks, all of us, we have a work to do to not allow that to continue, to to examine those expectations, to really tear them apart and allow Black women to be human, to be vulnerable, to be full, and not expecting Black women to be holding all of this stuff for everybody, because it really is toxic and it's dangerous for all of us. And so I just want to lift up that you named that piece, Ali. I also want to hold it, like, I know you asked for people to give feedback around other strategies, and I think that, and I'm pleased people share those if you have them. I also want to hold and just affirm and celebrate in gratitude to you for the strategies that you are doing. Like you named that you are doing things like, having taken calls later on at night, that you are like, sending out text messages, all those strategies, really making sure that your care and support is accessible to folks these systems have not been designed to be accessible for. When we talk about traditional therapy, the opportunity to get an hour away a week is a privilege for a lot of folks, right? Like, do I have a job that's gonna let me do that? Can I get away from my kids? Like, that's not something folks have. And what it makes me think, Lee, there's this tradition in many Black lesbian communities we talk about kitchen table therapy, where they actually cook together, and like cooking, some therapists will go up to people and tell them like, oh, we're gonna cook a meal together, we're gonna spend some time together at the table, and that actually is how I do my support.
That's
Those are the
beautiful.
really kind of powerful resistance models, and I just want to uplift it. That's what I see you doing, and naming that those are really great strategies. I just want to uplift them and affirm that for as the work you're doing. Thank you so much for sharing, Lee.
Thank you.
All right, so I want to go on to the next piece. I want to go to the next piece because this seems really relevant to this moment. I want to talk a little bit about, in our peer support practices, something called martyr nurturing. So what is martyr nurturing? Just like it sounds like, and it really builds upon what Lee just shared, martyr nurturing is a caring style that centers the desecration and denial of self. Say that one more time. Martyr nurturing is a caring style that centers the desecration and denial of self as a mechanism for both supporting and maintaining control over others. I'll let that breathe in jail for a lot of people. So when we talk about martyr nurturing, it's the idea that I have to martyr myself to take care of other people and that is something valued and to be celebrated. And it's deeply misogynistic. It is deeply sexist. It's built on this idea around women primarily, that women should literally kill themselves to take care of other folks, and that is something that we uplift in our community. That we uplift Black women saying, I worked 6 jobs and I didn't eat some nights. We honoring that was a sacrifice, but that is a sacrifice that no one should ever have to make. That is not, we should be asking the question of, why did she have to do that? Why do we have a system and a community that had made it so she had to do that? Why did she have to also work a job and then come home and cook a food for her family, take care of these kids, when she had a partner who could have also supported in those processes? Martyr nurturing is this idea that says, like, this is just the way things should be, that we should be allowing people to martyr themselves and minimize their needs to support other folks. This is a toxic practice in our community, and it's taught. Not just it's taught by men, by women, by non-binary folks, by all of us. So this is valiant, but it is destructive, and it is a reason why we are not effective in our peer support, because we're running from this way. So I want to have some folks just read different lines of the primary practices out loud. So if you want to read a line and we can chat a little bit about it, you can just raise your hand, please, because I don't want to just hear my voice. I like to hear other people's voices in the room. So if you want to read just one line, and that'd be helpful. So I want to hear from some folks who maybe haven't shared thus far. I'm gonna go to anybody, but anybody who hasn't shared, just to read a line. Let's talk a little bit about this concept. So I see Jessica here. Jessica, I'm gonna mute you. Can you read the first line? Let's talk about it. Or the first 2, actually. Jessica, can you hear me?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Okay.
Okay.
Yes, I can.
Denigrating, denying, and minimizing self in the service of others.
Mm-hmm.
Building somatic, psychic, and emotional resentment through lack of boundaries. Always saying yes.
What's your reaction to that, Jessica? Thoughts, feelings, reactions to reading those pieces and its concept?
I totally agree with those. There are things that I saw in my house growing up in a strong matriarchal background. It was nothing for my grandmother to be up all night sewing and then get up and go to work the next morning without sleep. And I modeled those things growing up. I worked 2 jobs and 3 jobs at one time. And it was just being able to take care of yourself. And trying to redo those values now is so hard. And that's part of my reason why sometimes I don't feel supported, because it's the hardest thing to do is to ask for help. And also to say no to people that you feel are counting on you.
Mm-hmm. I say that's very real. Thank you so much for lifting that up. And also, like, I just want to make sure I hold it. Like, the story you said, Jessica. Thank you for sharing that about your grandmother, like working like that. That it is not just it's not the individuals. It's a system that has made it so many of us have to do those kind of things, right? That our grandmothers had to do those things. The systems in the communities that said, oh, this is the right way to be a Black woman, right? And so I want to make sure that we also are very clear that these systems in these communities put this pressure on Black women to show up like this, and don't create spaces for Black women, as much spaces as we can. We can create more spaces for Black women to be able to rest, to be supported. And so it's not just an individual piece. There is individual components, but it's also a big societal structural piece that we as a community, all of us of all genders, have to interrogate and dismantle, right? And so just want to lift that up, and thank you so much for sharing that, Jessica. Um, thank you for sharing. Can someone read the next two lines, please? I'm gonna come down to see who's next with their hand up. I see Tariq. I'm gonna unmute you. There you go. Okay. And it takes a second. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Hey.
Hey. So the next two is using nurturing as a means of control and method to avoid the vulnerability of being cared for. Trying to rescue others instead of supporting them in their learning process. And the
What is
last
your
one,
reaction to that? Oh, you can read the last one. Go ahead.
Using guilt to exploit. I guess my reaction to that is, yeah, most times we feel like as community organizers or community leaders that because we're doing the work as support for our community that we don't deserve or need. I think even beyond just deserve, need the support of others and to be vulnerable. So I feel like because we feel that doing that work don't mean the work needs to be, reciprocated to us. And I mean, I see it all the time. I know for sure I've practiced that, like, well, I can't be vulnerable because a part of my work is, helping those who are vulnerable, which, goes back to kind of the beginning of what you said. Like, if you can't, find vulnerability in yourself, with yourself to your community, how can you support those who are vulnerable in the same community? I think peer support is, it's the relationship between two people. And so to hide behind that vulnerability is not really doing that kind of peer support work at all.
Mm, mm, mm. I love the piece you said about hiding behind that vulnerability, because like that's such a huge piece. Like, we don't think of nurturing as a means of control or a method to avoid our own vulnerability. But like, we talk about, like, if I'm the caretaker and I'm taking care of everybody else, there's a way I can kind of like use that to kind of like keep everybody's eyes off of me and my needs and my stuff too. My stuff that I need to work on, my stuff that I need to show up, because I'm just like, oh, you good, you good, you good, you good. I'm just you gooding everybody else to, like, to focus, to focus on me. And then what ends up happening is I don't get the support that I need. But I think that oftentimes at the root of that, and I know we talked about this before as well, is that often at the root of that is that we're scared to let somebody hold us or support us, because maybe one time we had an experience where somebody supported us and held us and was supposed to support us and look out for us, and they didn't do it, or they didn't do it right, or they hurt us, or they failed us. And sometimes I find with a lot of us who are care professionals, what I call care professionals, from Black Lives Matter activists to therapists, people who do care for other folks, is that we may have a big wound around I was vulnerable and soft, and somebody didn't honor that softness, and now I can't let anybody else get connected to that softness again because I'm scared of that, scared of being hurt like that, which is the big piece I see happening with a lot of folks. I'm sorry, were you still there, Turkey? You still there?
Yes. Yeah. And I think, but
Okay.
I mean, I think on the other side of that fear is where the breakthrough for the community, right? Like, not just for yourself, but for those that you're supporting. Like, because I believe that's going to happen, right? You're going to be let down in a lot of ways. I think that's a part of being a vulnerable, but it's the knowledge and what you gain from that. And if you have that fear that's blocking you and that control mechanism, then I think when you get on the other side of that, I think your support for others will be, stronger and better because of it.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing. And so, a part of our work as we deepen our peer support work, we want to get deeper into the work we're doing in the community. This is like the 201, right? And we have to clock ourselves. How do we learn this practice? How do we see this happening with our other folks that we love and care for, who may be martyring themselves to nurture other folks and not getting the support they need? Because this literally contributes to all kinds of poor health outcomes for our folks, but also lack of sustainability of our folks. We can't be sustainable in our work, you all, if we are using this as a model and a practice, because we burn out. It's like when I go to nonprofit organizations, sometimes I work with them over a course of a couple of months, and I come back in 3 months, a whole new staff. I'm like, Why is it a whole new staff? Because everybody's using this framework. Everybody's martyring themselves, feeling like they need to like take themselves out for the work, but it's not sustainable. And then what ends up happening is that then like people just burn out and they disappear. They burn out and they disappear. They're no longer in the work. And so a part of our work as peer support folks is we got to get deeper with like what's showing up for us, what is the care that we need, and building our support around that piece, right? Let's see if there's any questions in the chat box really quickly. I'm just going to go in there. Let's just go in here. Okay, no other questions. Just some affirmations. Thank you all for the affirmations. I'm a Southerner, so I appreciate the affirmations. That's helpful. And so I think it's important. So it's important to always acknowledge that, like, oops, why is it skipping? Oh, it's skipping. Okay, hold on. PowerPoint technology moment. All right. It's important to acknowledge when you are talking about if you're in this room and you're talking about Black folks got trauma and Black folks need to heal. I want you to remember that you are also them Black folk. Let me say that one more time. When you're talking about Black folks got trauma and Black folks need healing and Black queer women and Black disabled folks, and you're talking about the distress we're in, remember that you are also a part of that group and in that number. And so that means that you also need to be engaging into your own work and doing your own support. And I really struggle with calling it work because I feel like that sounds so capitalist, but it's just engaging with your own awareness and pieces. I do believe that even though I struggle with the term, I believe we are the work, right? And whatever gets in the way of the work is actually the work. It's what the world is calling you to come into to do. And so this 201 is really centered around like how are we doing our work or how are we not doing our work, and the places where you are not engaging your own stuff are the places where we are not able to show up in the most optimal way for other folks sometimes. If I'm not really ready to contend with my guilt and my shame around a particular situation or circumstance, when somebody comes into my life that I need to support and they activate that, and I like to use the word activate as opposed to trigger. I know we talked about trigger earlier. Trigger is a common word, it's fine. I like to use activate or awaken because trigger sometimes seems like a very violent word. So I like to feel like I can be activated by something somebody says and it reminds me of something. For example, I did family intervention counseling where I used to work with men who committed assault and battery. At one point during this, I had a co-facilitator, and there was one point through those years, one person came into the room, and I was hyperactivated by this person because they reminded me of a person in my own childhood who was abusive and aggressive, and their mentality, their posture. And luckily, I had a co-facilitator who was noting that I was kind of showing up differently in my body and in my facilitation style. But if I didn't have that awareness of that, it was already starting me to kind of like become defensive, become a little combative with that person. And all of it was because I was being activated, right? That person was bringing up that stuff. We have to be mindful to have folks around us who can help us see when we're activated, but also cultivate more skills and strategies with our own bodies and wellness. So we can see that like, oh, I'm activated right now. And I might need to recuse myself to pull back from this. Or I might need to get some support or let you know hey, I might not be the person to help facilitate this for you. I might not be the right therapist, Reiki teacher, yoga teacher, peer support coach for you because this is too closely aligned with some stuff I'm still working through. It's okay. We're always going to have stuff we're working through. But we have to have the awareness so that we don't get into a dynamic and we're like, this isn't something I can do work with. Somebody I can do work with. Somebody else might be a better fit to support you. But we have to be mindful and know our stuff. And also when we know our stuff and we know we're activated, we also know where there's opportunities for us to do our own healing work, right? So this really knowing those pieces is super critical. So another piece I want to make sure we talk about in this modern nurturing piece, because modern nurturing intersects this stuff in this current moment around grief. Right. So we need to really make sure we're open and honest about how grief is showing up. We're talking about, I was on a phone call this past week with some community partners who work in Detroit. And they were saying, this actually was hard to say. They were saying that in their collaborative networks, they thought they had lost about 600, maybe even more people. That's a lot. That's a lot of folks, y'all. In this moment of COVID-19, there is a lot of grief happening in our community. We can't be martyr nurturers and not attend to our own grief. But we also, or we can be martyr nurturers and we'll create that harm. But one thing I want to invite us is not be martyr nurturers and not ignore that grief that we're feeling, but also acknowledge that our families and our communities and our loved ones, especially Black folks, are experiencing a lot of grief right now. So I just want to hold that and just let that have some space and some moment when we talk about how many folks we are losing right now, and all the folks that you all are supporting across the country are dealing with grief. Grief does not show up in segmented stages. One thing that's really important to talk about, I see a lot of people sharing the 5 stages of grief. That can be a useful framework for some folks. It's important to know that most research that has been done since that was created, and that was created actually for people who were contemplating their own grief, their own death, and not necessarily for other folks. But is that most research and therapists nowadays have said that actually grief doesn't come in those distinct stages. People show up grief in a lot of different ways, and it's not linear. It's back and forth. It's up and down. It may be a consistent process that we go through all of our lives. So these are some of the ways we talk about that grief is showing up in our communities right now. Some of us who are doing peer support work, we're overworking ourselves in response to the grief. I'm going to hold that. We're pushing ourselves, and I know this is something that I struggle with. You can talk to some of my teammates. When the realities of COVID-19, I started hearing more from my community partners about what was happening, I went into overwork mode, and I had to have colleagues who were like, I need you to take a moment to pause because you're not sitting with your grief, you're overworking, and it's not becoming healthy for folks, right? Some of us are in shock. Some of us are underworking, to be honest. We're just like, I'm not even moving. We're just like sitting with it, right? Like, think about it also in professional environments too, right? We're just kind of like, we don't have the movement or the space for it. We might find some of our folks becoming more antagonistic or combative. We might be losing attention to detail, having emotional outbursts, sleeplessness, restlessness, feelings of worthlessness. It's a lot I hear a lot of peer support workers like feeling like we're not doing enough, even though you're seeing 20 folks a day, doing so many peer support groups, raise millions of dollars for folks. People are feeling like, oh my God, I'm not doing enough, you know? Hold on 1 second, you all. I need to plug my computer in. There we go. People are also having like flashbacks, anxiety of feared outcomes, rage and anger. So we need to really make sure that in this moment we're paying attention to how grief is showing up for us, how we process grief, but also giving our folks in our communities to understand that grief shows up in a lot of different ways. We're no strangers to grief as Black folks. We are no strangers to grief as Black folks, right? Let's be very clear. We some people would say we're even like master grievers. We've developed these strategies, but we also have to hold that in this moment, we don't have our traditional kind of healing strategies that we used to be able to use to kind of help us, right? So, you think about post-funerals, we have the repast, we go home, we have the meals, we sit with each other, we talk with each other, we joke, people play card games. Can't do that right now. So that means that for some folks, it's almost keeping us from kind of moving through the processes that we are used to mourn our loved one, right? And so I want us to hold this, to be clear about this and see this and know that this is happening for us and for other folks, right? So I see a couple of hands up. I want to take some hands and just talk to folks about this piece, other pieces coming up. But I want us to be intentional about holding this. How are you grieving? How are you coping? How are you supporting people in their own processes? C.W. Johnson, I saw your hand go up. I'm going to unmute you to come into the conversation. And I think you're unmuted. C.W., are you there? Hello? I can't hear me. Okay.
Can you hear me?
All right. So I'm going to mute you. Oh yeah, I can hear you now. Hi.
Okay.
Hi.
Hi, I'm CW. I'm glad to be here. One of my favorite snacks is, I believe, peach cobbler with a scoop of vanilla ice cream. And so one of the things that bothers me that I'm dealing with is anxiety and depression and guilt. I really feel guilty because I'm really, I don't want to say, I guess, blessed, but I'm really lucky to be able to work from home. And so I have not suffered a loss of income. I have a place, so there are people out there on the streets that are suffering that I see every day, and I feel guilty that I'm depressed, and it's like I'm depressed and I'm guilty. I feel guilty because I'm depressed. I'm depressed because I feel guilty. So it's a really weird dynamic, and I never thought about maybe I'm grieving in a way that I've never that I don't recognize, and
Mm-hmm.
so I'm trying to figure out how to not translate that to the people I work with. I'm a
Mm-hmm.
community
Mm-hmm.
outreach worker, and I do a lot of facilitations and do some workshops and stuff like that. And so, not recognizing my own grief, but also trying not to input that in with the people that I'm dealing with on a day-to-day basis. So
Mm-hmm.
that's kind of
Mm-hmm.
where I'm at.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Thank you for sharing, CW, and thank you for the work that you're doing for our folks. Um, I appreciate you acknowledging the piece about not even realizing that we may be grieving in a certain way, that you may be grieving in a certain way. I think that's so important that sometimes we think we have an idea of how we show up, but then we're like, well, maybe I'm grieving differently. Maybe it's showing up in a different way. And so I just appreciate you lifting that up and naming that. And all those feelings are legitimate, and a lot of folks are experiencing the same feelings of guilt, of grief, of frustration. Um, and so I just want to hold that and just thank you for your vulnerability and sharing that with each of us. And like, because we're all in the mirror seeing variations of ourselves in your telling. So thank you for sharing. One thing I think that's really powerful that I've seen some folks do is determining what boundaries you want to have around this, of course. But I think people like sharing with some of their clients, like, their grief, right? Like, and like, once again, you have to figure out whatever your relationship is. If you're peer support, if you're a therapist, it's different for different folks. For some people, just saying, they're like, yeah, it's hard right now. I'm grieving. I'm grieving what's happening in this moment. I'm struggling with this moment. And I found that as a great connector for folks to show that not only it helps open up the space for other folks to trust, because sometimes when we're in superhero mode, or we're those people who are considered to be the community support, we don't always share a lot about our struggles, so people don't feel that connection with us. But in those moments where we're grieving, if we share that, it can sometimes give people permission to be like, yeah, I'm struggling with this too, And so that's one thing I've seen really folks do that's really been beautiful and powerful. But of course, you have to figure out how you do that in a way that feels good for you, in a way that feels comfortable. But I just want to thank you for bringing that in the room, because that's real, and you were definitely not alone. I know that's something I struggle with too as well. And I think that the last piece I would say about that is that we live in a system that created these conditions. You know, we live in systems that create and it's the systems that need to be transformed and changed. It's the systems and the policies that create the inequality, that create the health disparities, that we can find a way to channel our guilt and frustration into those systems to transform them and make them equitable for our folks, so our folks are not suffering the way that our folks are suffering now in the future. And I think that's one thing I think about often and try to put my work into. So
All right, thank you
thank you,
very much.
CW, for sharing. Thank you. Okay. Looking at the time, we're 11:37. All right. So I'm just gonna go through these last couple of pieces. So we coming back to this peer support model. I want to make sure we may remember that this is also for us. Are you listening for distress and harm in yourself? Are you listening to your body? Are you listening to what your spirit's telling you? To what your emotions are telling you? To what the world around you is telling you? This is a model, yeah, it's for peer support, but we also are peers, right? Are you affirming your feelings? Are you denying or minimizing your feelings? Are you getting partnership with other people to get the care that you need? See, y'all know it's gonna flip it on you, but it's about us too. Are you developing care plans for yourself in your work as you are supporting folks? And are you getting the help that you need, and the variety of ways can show up? And it's important to say that, like, when we talk about healing justice work, it's not just about having a therapist. For some people, talk therapy may not be the modality that helps them get to what they need to get to. It could be drumming, it could be art, it could be journaling, it could be Reiki, it could be herbalism, it might be tarot, it might be church, it might be singing, it might be going to the mosque. It could be a variety of different strategies. Your medication, all these pieces can be strategies. What do you need to support and nourish and sustain yourself? Are you listening to what your needs are? You might be listening to everybody else's needs. What are your needs? Do you need to be held? Do you need to be like, what is it that you need to be able to show up? And also, if I can, and no one else tells you this, I want you all to please leave this place knowing that your needs matter and must be lifted up to the same level of the needs of the folks that you support. And I'll say it again. Your needs matter, and they have to be lifted up to the same level of people you support. If you are on this line, in this space, and in this community, and you are doing all the work for everyone else and neglecting yourself, you are harming the community, because you are a part of the community. If you are practicing martyr nurturing and denying your own self and needs, you are harming the community, because you are a part of the community. You are a part of this organism, right? It is the community. And so it's how do you stop that? What strategies do you need? What support do you need to listen and to affirm your feelings and your experience? And understanding that it's a slow roll. We're not going to stop it overnight, right? We've learned these things all our lives. When Lee shared those things earlier about the things that we have taught Black women and Black femme folks around nurturing, to deny their needs, to overwork, to feel shame for not being there every single moment of every day, or being superheroes, while we don't teach Black men the same thing, you know. I often tell the story really randomly about how one time when I was doing a counseling group, there was a man who came in, and he had a newborn, and he was really happy. He came in, he was like, let me tell y'all, the baby was like 4 months at that point. Both him and his partner both worked full-time jobs. And he was like, I'm so proud of myself because, I got up one night, and I actually got the baby. And the guys in the room, these are all cisgender men, got in the room, they were like, yeah, you got up, that's so good. You got up one night, and then they're giving him all the dose. And I'm sitting in the back like, no, we're not doing this right now. And they're like, Yolo, what's your problem? I'm like, you got up one night. This baby is how old? 4 or 5 months old. Who got up the last 5 months? And the room fell silent, right? Who got up the last 5 months? And his wife did. See, the expectation was that she had to get up every night, but he got up once, because the expectations are so low on how we expect sometimes men to show up emotionally or nurturing in our family, that he got all of this praise. They ready to throw a party and ice cream cake, y'all. He got up one night. I said, you don't get cookies for doing the work that of parenting a child that in your life in this way. That's how patriarchy shows up. That's how male privilege shows up in our community. Because if she had missed one night, not only would the internal misogynoir have kicked in and told her to tell herself that she should be ashamed, he would have probably shamed her. Her mother would have shamed her. There is a deep culture of shame around those pieces. So that's just one example of how misogynoir and racism and sexism, all those things show up in community, right? So really holding there are different expectations, and those expectations are unfair, as opposed to community where we can have expectations that, hey, we both made a child together, so we both got to figure out how to make this work. We both got to get up. If I'm working a full-time job and you work a full-time job too, we both have to get up in the middle of the night, and we alternate nights. We figured because we both in this together, right? So just thinking about the ways in which those misogynoir and sexism really shows up in those pieces. I see a question from Jessica says, what do you do when you identify your need and you are unable to fulfill it? That's real. There might be a need that you have and you're not able to fill that need in the moment, right? So what coping strategies can you do in the interim to help you manage that need until you can get it fulfilled, right? So for example, let's be real. COVID-19 reality, maybe your quarantined alone, and you may feel like you want touch, or you want some kind of intimacy that you feel like you can't get right now, right? Um, so what are the strategies that you can do to kind of take care of yourself in the interim? What are the pieces that can be safe for yourself? What can you do in a harm reduction approach to take care of yourself in the interim, right? So that's the reality, is we all have needs that we can't get met in certain times and spaces. So we have to come up with strategies to help ourselves cope in the meantime. What does that look like? Going back to that coping sheet, which is also in the handouts down there. All right. So let's see. Let me see if there's any other questions. Darnell says, I did speak. Oh, I did speak? I didn't. Okay, Darnell says, I did speak, but I'm struggling with people in my community are suffering. I want to help them as much as possible. All right, I hear you, Darnell. And Darnell says, I have to continuously be vulnerable in all spaces. Commend your work, and we are allies in the movement. Ashe, yes. It is hard when we are expected to be vulnerable, but we also have to be mindful of our boundaries and take care of our boundaries, and know that there's a time when we can pull back and nurture and take care of ourselves, right? Super critical in our work. It is 11:45. We are 15 minutes past our time. This was a little bit of our deepening in terms of our peer support. I want to take a couple more questions if people have some thoughts and feedback, just reactions to things, before we do our final gratitude and closing exercise. So if you have a question or a comment, please raise your hand. I know some people still have your hands raised from earlier, but if you have if you have not spoken, I want to invite people who haven't spoken. We have a lot of people in the room who haven't shared anything. So if you have something you want to share, a thought or a feeling, feel free to chat, or also also raise your hand, and I will unmute you, because we love to hear from you. I'll pause here, give people a second. All right, I see Lyndon. I'm going to unmute you. I see you raise your hand. Hi, Lyndon. Can you hear me?
I can hear you, Yolo. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Hi.
Hi. Thank you for this session. Thank you for just having this forum. It's life-saving in so many ways. I appreciate you. I appreciate your work. And gathering us. I wanted to ask a question about justice, and really reframing what we think about in terms of justice, so that the beauty of putting together the word healing and the word justice together, and what it means to think about justice as something that can be inwardly achieved. I know we often look for justice in the world, justice from all kinds of institutions, justice after someone's been unlawfully murdered by the police. In various ways, we look for justice, but then also, what does it mean to think about healing as part of the project of justice? Is really intriguing and exciting.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Can you say more, Lyndon? I mean, you opened up a word for us.
No, I mean, I was just curious about it. I'm excited about that prospect, because it means that we are healing workers, also justice workers. Oftentimes, I think there can be a shaming about thinking about healing, or maybe a prioritization of healing work. Once we, get justice in the world, we get all these really important things accomplished. By getting someone, and I'm not a fan of the prison industrial complex, but getting people, locked up, or getting people, murdered by the state. That seems in some ways like a kind of justice, not to belittle people's feelings of frustration and real anger and rage at injustice that's been done to them in the world. But that can often feel like that takes a priority over making sure that a lot of folks who end up being the kind of the martyrs you were talking about, the martyrs that were sort of self-sacrificing in order to get that justice accomplished. And there's a lot of drama, a lot of trauma that happens in the process of trying to get that done. and not real attention. We'll deal with the kind of psychosocial effects, the mourning, the feelings of pain and frustration later, after we get this person taken care of, or get this, I don't know, this wrong dealt with. And it feels like those things should be connected, but I've never heard the language yet to be able to put those two things together, to be able to think about healing as part of the practice of justice too, and a piece that often gets left out when we're looking for kind of justice in the world. And it also feels like something that feels more in my control. I feel like I have more control over the healing part of that. If I can get justice in terms of my own emotions and kind of heal myself, that feels like I'm in a better place than to advocate, maybe get denied justice in the world or by institutions. But I was just curious about that. What kind of influence putting that? You maybe talked about that in 101, and I wasn't there for that. I apologize. But just thinking about what it means to think about justice in those more expansive terms.
Yeah, absolutely. There's some great work that on our website we have an actual tab dedicated to healing justice, Linda, and I definitely recommend you check out the Kindred Healing Justice Collective, the National Queer and Trans Therapists of Color Network, the work of folks like Prentice Hemphill, Leah Lakshmi have done a lot of, Miriam Kaba have done, Shir Hassan. A lot of folks have done a lot of amazing work around this conversation and this discussion that you lift up here. And so some of those resources will be sent in the follow-up email as well. So thank you for lifting that up and bringing that into the room, Lyndon. Appreciate you.
Thanks, Yolo.
I also think it's important to name that I know that a lot of people are in this moment. There's a lot of conversation about Ahmaud Arbery, who was gunned down, and a lot of folks are experiencing a lot of grief for that in our community. Collectively, I think we're feeling a lot of grief and frustration, in addition to all of the murders of Black trans women that have happened this year as well. So I just want to hold a moment to just to name that grief, that frustration, that anger, that rage, the righteous rage at the ways in which our folks are being treated, and even the health disparities that have made this moment even possible, created by these systems. So I'm going to hold that for a moment. So we've come to the end of our time together. I want to thank you all so much for being present. We have two things we like to do to close out our activity. The first one is I just want to invite you to do a brief little exercise with me. And as an invitation, you don't have to accept the invitation. You can rescind it. You can say like, YOLO, I'm good. I don't need to do that. That's all good. I promise you I won't be offended. I want to invite you wherever you are, if you're standing, if you're seated, wherever you are, to once again take a moment to try to root yourself and ground yourself in this present moment. For some of us, that might mean bringing our attention to our breath. You may want to close your eyes if that feels comfortable. If not, you can leave them open, bring them to a soft gaze. But I want to invite you to once again just bring yourself in attention to this body, your body, where your spirit lives. If you like, you can join me and you can put your palm in the center of your chest. It's something I like to do. It helps me ground. You might put your hands on your thighs, whatever you feel comfortable or able to do. But I want to invite you to bring your attention to your breath and your body. This is the body that your ancestors fought for. The right to be in this body with all of its nuances, its strengths, its challenges, its opportunities for growth, all of that. This is your body. This is your vessel. That Black folks, that Black queer folks, that Black trans folks, Black disabled folks have fought for generations to say that we have a right to be in this body, to love this body, to be present with this body, to struggle with this body. We're going to take some time to celebrate it and send some love and honor to this beautiful body, this powerful body that you are in, this wise body. So just feeling your presence. And then I want to invite you, if you would like to take your arms and wrap yourself in a hug. You might squeeze yourself tight. You might squeeze slowly if you can. And if you can't, you can do the hug. You can just keep your hand in your palm center or wherever feels comfortable for you. You might just rest your hand. But if you hug yourself or whatever you're doing, now I want to invite you to imagine all the love and support and care that you send to everybody else in the world. All those mamas you help, all those boys you support, all those people that look out to you, look up for you. I want you to imagine all that love you give out to them, and I want you to take some of that and give that to yourself. Just imagine that coming to you as light, filling you up. That tenderness, that sweetness, that support. Hug yourself tighter. Send that love, some of that love to you. You got to get some of that love too. You're giving it to everybody else, yes, give it, but also give it to you too. And breathe into that. Give yourself that love, that nurturing, that tenderness, and make that a practice. Make that a norm. Make that every day. All right, letting our arms fall and coming back into the moment. Close out everything with gratitude. This is the end of our day, our time together. We'll have a 301, which will go into much deeper, talking about supporting other folks and other pieces. But I want to thank you for your time. I'm grateful for your presence. So grateful for you all. So grateful to know that even as Beam and all of our work, we're doing work. It's so grateful every time I have a call. I get to hear more and more about all the things that you all are doing. That is so amazing. It's just like grateful to know that I'm a part of this amazing community. And I hope you all know that as you're on the call, to know that like you're a part of this legacy, but also a part of this amazing folks. So my gratitude goes to you all. If you have any closing gratitude you'd like to share before we wrap up, please put it in the question. I will read out the gratitude. But I just want to say thank you to you all. We'll follow up with a follow-up email, which will let you know about other future opportunities. Please check out our website at beam.community. Please share these tools with all your folks. And yeah, that is all I got for today. Thank y'all so much. I see a couple of thank yous from Jessica, from Darren. Thank y'all so much for your time. Make sure you please fill out our evaluation to give us feedback if you have some thoughts about if you liked it, because it helps our funders give us more money to do more stuff. So if you like it, please let us know. That concludes our time. Thank y'all so much. Y'all have a great day. Take care of yourselves and each other. And for some reason, it's not letting me just stop the recording. Hold on one second. Hi. So wait, the webinar is over. I don't know why I'm still here. We're having a technology moment. So the webinar is over. I'm just trying to figure out how to stop the webinar. I guess I'll just do this. Okay. Oh, end webinar.